All right, welcome back to the Inside Nebraska Recruiting Blitz podcast. I'm joined today by none other than Inside Nebraska football analyst Steve Marik. Steve and I, it's been a busy week for Nebraska football, or Nebraska recruiting specifically. Picked up 3 commits over this past week. We've had camps this weekend. Steve and I have been in the stands at Memorial Stadium, kind of making the rounds across all the different fields these last 3 days or so. So we've got a lot to recap. We've got a lot to talk about. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to dive right in it. So first off, camp weekend. This is the first weekend of camps for Nebraska, at least the on-campus camps. They had Friday night lights on Friday. The past 2 days, they've had what they call the Matt Rule football camps from 9 to 2 p.m. We've seen a good number of offers go out. 2 2025 offers, 2 new 2025 offers. I think those are the most important to discuss off the top. We'll start with 2025 Gilbert linebacker Will Hawthorne. Caught up with Will on the offer. This is one of just a few for him right now. He's already got official visits scheduled to Iowa State and Kansas State. He's trying to move this recruitment kind of quick. Nebraska's been in touch for a couple of months. He visited back in the fall, so he's familiar with Nebraska, but he is trying to move this recruitment kind of quick, hoping to make a decision by July. And Nebraska did just offer. So Nebraska's working quick to try and get him on a midweek official visit. That'll happen. He's just working to figure out dates. That'll happen. We're recording this on Sunday. That'll actually happen Sunday night is when he's planning on, sitting down and scheduling some of those visits. So Nebraska's going to get him on an official visit. Nebraska's hoping to add him to the linebacker class, hoping to add him to the 2025 class. But of course, Iowa State, a team he grew up rooting for, and Kansas State, a team that, has had a good tradition of producing and developing linebackers, are both involved with him. Will was a guy that we got eyes on, kind of like what he does. He's a versatile prospect, at the high school level, plays some running back, plays some linebacker, kind of does everything. Impressive, physical traits, ran a sub 1100 meter, at it's like 6'3", at a linebacker size. So impressive athleticism, good looking prospect. We like what we saw from him. The other 2025 offer, go ahead.
He just fits. Like I think he just fits at Nebraska. He fits in Rob Dvoracek's linebacker room, especially in that 3-front defense. You mentioned everything that he does. That just kind of seems exactly what Rob Dvoracek wants out of his linebackers in a Nebraska scheme. So I think that is kind of a cool offer that I think I can see why they are really interested in him.
No doubt. And I would say I wouldn't say people shouldn't. I think, Steve, you would agree as well. People shouldn't read into this too much about what this means for potentially Dawson Merritt or Christian Jones. I think this was just a player that's been on Nebraska's radar for some time, that came to camp, answered whatever questions the staff had about his movement ability, and earned an offer. Regardless of the staff is going to offer players they believe in, regardless of what the board looks like. We know that by now. I wouldn't take this as an indication about anything regarding Christian Jones or Dawson Merritt.
Totally agree.
The other 2025 offer was a guy that caught both of our attention the past 2 days. He came out on Saturday, worked out at running back, worked out at receiver, worked out at corner, and then did the same thing today. Mainly did corner today. Got some special attention from Evan Cooper. But that was Columbus, Ohio. Out of Columbus, Ohio, Beechcroft athlete Tyrell Russell, a guy that was just hard to miss yesterday. Every time we were watching one-on-ones yesterday on both sides of the ball. And he was just a guy that every single rep we had to focus in on, and we're like, wow, like every single time, he was out there at corner or receiver, we're just making plays. Really impressed with what we saw out of him. I caught up with him as well following the offer. It kind of came as a surprise. It was his first Power 5 offer. He doesn't have a whole lot yet, but he's got a busy month of camps, hoping to earn some more. He said after Nebraska offered Michigan State, Rutgers, a couple of those programs have shown some interest. He's going to camp at Purdue later this month, among a couple other schools. Has an unofficial visit to Toledo. That was a school that's already offered him. Really good athlete, really impressive track times. I believe, Steve, you had those, but noted. But really impressive track times from him, and really impressive athlete, like we said. Really impressive wide receiver. Plays running back in high school. And he mentioned this coming year he's hoping to rush for 2,000 yards, which is really lofty goal, but something he can accomplish. I think the upside here is highest at corner. He mentioned, this camp he was working a lot with Evan Cooper on back pedal technique and just really trying to correct and work on his cornerback technique. I think the staff sees him as a defensive back long term. They've offered him as an athlete, but they do see him as a defensive back long term. And I tend to agree. That athleticism in that relatively compact frame makes the most sense at DB. He fits what the staff likes. The Dwight Boodle, the now gone
Yeah.
Even Nation, but they love
Yeah.
these small, feisty corners.
Yeah, I mean, 5'11", 175 pounds for Tyrell Russell. And you're right, Tim. I mean, when we were sitting in there in the stands watching, you just gravitated toward him. Your eyes just found him because he was quick, he was shifty, his feet just like really, really fast, choppy steps, in control of his body, just really tight, kind of changing direction. His tight corners that he was taking, really impressive. And yeah, you mentioned the track times. I looked him up. He ran a 10.55 second 100-meter dash. His 200 was at 21.44 seconds. So this cat can move. And yeah, I mean, the size is what it is, but I don't think Evan Cooper, Matt Rule obviously really put that much emphasis into, what a guy looks like. If they like him, they can, they really, if they like him, they offer him. So, yeah, he was one that just kind of caught our attention for sure. And you mentioned the offers too: Toledo, Akron, Marshall, and then Nebraska's his first power conference offer. So I think he's going to get more. I don't know about you, Tim, but he'll like you said, his camp season is not over, so he's going to be a busy guy, and I think he'll get a few more offers here before the end of this recruiting cycle is over. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really thought that Tyrell Russell was really fun to watch, and I could see why Evan Cooper and Matt Rule kind of really were interested in him after watching him compete against other cats.
For sure. And one other note on him, he mentioned he's planning an official visit to Nebraska, just doesn't have the date set just yet. Again, it's a busy month. He's trying to squeeze it in. Timeline is a little more fluid here. He's kind of taking his time with the process. Of course, now getting his first Power 5 offer, he's just trying to collect these offers and kind of figure out what feels like home. I think, he understands that he's been slept on a bit. And he's kind of waking up some people on this.
And you mentioned the slept on part in his Twitter bio. I love it. It's hashtag prove him wrong. And I think every time he gets an offer, he adds that hashtag prove him wrong. I like that. I don't know. It's just a little something.
For sure. And he's also got, he's got he mentioned he's staying with his aunt in Lincoln, till Tuesday. He's actually got family in Lincoln. So, there's some family ties to,
there you go.
Would help, in Nebraska's pursuit of him. They can get him down for multiple visits, through this recruiting process if needed, because he's got family right here. Two other just offers we want to touch on. They offered, about the 7-8. We're going to probably go see some more coming out of the weekend of total offers down to 26 and 2027. We don't need to really touch on those right now. We've got a limited time here. But two quarterback offers, I think it's important to note. Friday night, they offered Maine South quarterback Jameson Purcell, Maine South in Illinois. Purcell actually reached out to me before he came down to Nebraska just to say, hey, I'm coming. But he also, mentioned that, he running backs coach EJ Bartell stopped by his school in the spring. They really connected while he was there. So he's been interested in Nebraska, already has some legitimately D1 interest, already has some D1 offers as a 2027 going into a sophomore year of high school. And he's got some other Nebraska ties as well. He's trained with some QB trainers out in California that in the past have worked with Dylan Raiola. He actually met up with Dylan Friday before the camp. Just, another familiar face that would hypothetically be working for Nebraska in this recruitment. We didn't get eyes on Purcell, but we did get eyes on 2028 Bishop Gorman quarterback Ace Amina. He landed an offer on Saturday. 2028 means he's not stepped foot in high school yet. He is an 8th grader. He's just finishing his 8th grade year. He's originally from Hawaii. He's moving to Las Vegas powerhouse Bishop Gorman. Nebraska fans at this point should be pretty familiar with Bishop Gorman. They've been a powerhouse for decades at this point. And Nebraska's recruiting, Nebraska landed an offensive lineman from there last year. They're recruiting 3 more this year. That's a program that Nebraska is really trying to build some inroads with, really trying to build a pipeline. That's a program that a lot of programs are trying to do that. But Nebraska, one of the first schools to offer Amina, who short in stature, like sub 6 foot right now. But again, he's only finishing the 8th grade. But from what we saw on Saturday, even there were some quarterbacks there with D1 offers, with D1 interest, and that are upperclassmen, of course, a couple years older than him. But he was the most impressive quarterback we watched on Saturday.
And especially with Glenn Thomas, kind of manning that quarterback group there, you could tell that he was kind of eyeing Ace. And again, the size is what it is. He's still growing. He's still developing. He's basically just a little kid right now. But you can tell when you watch him throw a football, it looks like it's coming out of the hand of an older kid. And so he's going to be developing in a great program. And again, you talk about Bishop Gorman. Obviously, Nebraska wants to dip their toes in that every single recruiting cycle. So that's going to be something to watch moving forward here.
For sure. And, this offer does also mean that, Nebraska's pursuit and like kind of westward expansion isn't stopping anytime soon. They're going to be out in Bishop Gorman for these next few years, trying to get Amina on campus, trying to recruit him. Again, it's very, very early for him. He's a 2028. He has not even stepped foot in high school, hasn't played a varsity snap. So, but has the attention of not just Nebraska, but Power 5 programs across the country. He's going to be a guy that, just in general is going to be someone we're going to have to keep an eye on these next few years. Shifting attention now, Nebraska, it's been a big week beyond the camp season for them. They picked up 3 commits over the last week. We'll start with the first one, a late 2024 addition, David Höffken out of Germany. He's 6'7", about 240 pounds. Really impressive looking player. He caught Nebraska's attention on Saturday at a camp at UMHB down in Belton, Texas. And then the next day, Höffken traveled down to Houston Christian with his organization Gridiron Imports. They're international nonprofit that helps some of these international kids help find Division I or college homes, basically guys that want to play football. They bring them to America, bring them to these camps and all of that. So they went to Houston Christian, which Nebraska's staff was also at. Donovan Raiola took some special attention to him, worked him out on both sides of the line, and they offered him, and he committed pretty much on the spot. We posted that video up at Inside Nebraska with the commitment story. You can go ahead and read that on Inside Nebraska. It's an interesting offer. I don't really know what to make of it right now.
I want to ask you something about that, Tim.
Go ahead.
So he's 22 years old. We know what about his. We know what we know about his football background, how much football he's actually played. I think there maybe the idea right now is maybe an offensive tackle. And he's around 240 pounds, 250 pounds. Obviously, he's gonna need to get heavier to do that. Do you think he's able to be like a 300 pounder at 6'7"? And do you think there's more potential maybe at D end? I know it's super early, and they can play around with him once he gets to Lincoln. But just what are your overall thoughts on David Höffken?
Yeah, it's interesting, because the talk when he first got the offer was that the staff was going to look at him at offensive tackle. Yeah. But then he just looking at the workout videos that have been posted from the last, from these camps.
I want him off the edge.
He looks good coming off the edge, like really smooth, really fluid at 6'7", powerful, like has power, and that's a position where you string together at his size. He learns 1-2 pass rush moves, like working with Knighton, working with the defensive staff, adds 1-2 pass rush moves. He's ready to go immediately. Like we said, he's a 22-year-old. Like this is, he's going to have all 4 years of eligibility, but this is somewhat more of an accelerated process. This isn't like a stash away. I don't necessarily think this is a guy you stash away for 2-3 years, let him work in the weight room. I think this is a guy that I think the staff's going to realize as well is when he gets on campus is, in a similar, I guess the best way to put it is like I put it on the board is feels similar like James Williams last year, a guy you get on campus, kind of figure out what he has and realize, hey, this guy can do some stuff in late game situations or in like third down pass rush situations where we just tell him, get out there, pin your ears back and get after the quarterback. He can do that, at this size even with his limited experience, he can already do that. I do have questions, about his ability to potentially add some weight. He's a very, very,
me too.
He's muscular, but lean, he
looks super, like there's not a lot of bad weight on there. So I'm just wondering if is 6'7", 300 even possible for that guy? I'm not sure.
Right, exactly. That's just one of those things. Looking at that frame, I just don't know exactly how because again, there's very limited fat, limited, kind of mass to turn into muscle there. Like it is all muscle right now. So I'm curious to see what the staff does with him. Again, he'll arrive in the fall. He's going to other camps. And just to reiterate kind of the point we talked about, of this position question with him, he went and camped with the Gridiron Imports team. They went and camped at Oklahoma. And I know a couple of people that cover Oklahoma, that work at Oklahoma, and I had a couple of texts like, hey, Nebraska's got something here. And I was like, what position do you think? Because Nebraska was looking at an offensive tackle, and they were like, no way is he an offensive tackle. He's a defensive end. They
Yeah.
want him. Oklahoma sees him as a guy that can rush the passer. Oklahoma didn't
Hmm.
offer. I think they're respecting that he committed to Nebraska and it is kind of signed, sealed, and delivered.
Hmm.
But he's a guy that he's going. I think he's planning to go back to Germany this summer, and then will arrive in Nebraska in August, if not September.
Hmm.
But a really interesting addition. Just something we wanted to note. The staff truly does leave no stone unturned. They're
It's
in their
absolutely a Matt Rule type situation.
Exactly. And we might not be done. They've got a post grad camp this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could see some more, late 2024 editions. This staff does not really care about the scholarship limit, doesn't really care about the roster
Mm-mm.
limits. They're just adding talent where they can.
Hmm.
And on that note, they did pick up 2 2025 commits, bringing the commit total in 2025 up to 10. I mentioned last month that I think Nebraska gets up well over double digit commits this month. It's the first week of June, and we are already at double-digit commits.
Hmm.
I could see up to 15, potentially even more commits by the end of June. It's going to be a busy month for
Yeah.
Nebraska. Touching with the first 25 commit they got in this last week, Jamarion Parker, 4-star running back out of St. Louis. Big addition for a couple of reasons. One, it gets you back into St. Louis. Obviously, that was something the staff's been trying to do for some
Hmm.
time, and this was big. Two, it's a big win for EJ Bartel. After losing Kwan Lacey last cycle, he got a win in bringing in Dante Dowdle, but more so than
Hmm.
anything, he's done a good job on the recruiting trail in terms of building relationships and helping Nebraska kind of out in Northeast, in state, and even with positions outside of running back, he has been a factor. But
Hmm.
the fan base was starting to kind of question his recruiting prowess, and I think he answered a lot of questions with the addition of Parker. Obviously, he has to hold on to Parker. Parker's going to Nebraska beat out Alabama, TCU for him. USC is a program that's been monitoring him. A couple other programs are definitely keeping an eye on Parker as well. So this is one that's not necessarily done. Nebraska's got to hold on to him, but a big win nonetheless, because this, by all accounts, as far as people I've talked to about Parker, this commitment was because of his relationship with EJ Bartel and his relationship with director of play personnel Keith Williams.
Now, I totally agree with you that this is huge for EJ Barthel because, and I think it's because of two different things. It's showing that I think EJ he's getting Jamarion from the high school recruiting part of this whole thing and relationship building. And I like that you mentioned Dante Dowdell because EJ Barthel did not recruit Dante Dowdell out of high school. He recruited him during the transfer portal process, just like other programs did. And I talked to the Dowdell family during their whole process with this thing before they committed to Nebraska. And one of the really key points that they said was that they were interested in joining Nebraska's program was because of Barthel, and that's because of what they heard from Barthel's coaching development skills from Carlos Lachlan, who at the time was Dante Dowdell's running backs coach at Oregon. He's now at Ohio State coaching running backs over there. But Carlos Lachlan had a lot of good things to say about EJ Barthel, so there's a connection there. Not only just with the recruiting high school side of things with Jamarion Parker, but also in the transfer portal. So I think this is just a really good thing for EJ Barthel. I think he's a really good coach. We saw that with the development that the Nebraska running back showed last year after it was just devastated by injuries, season-ending injuries to two starting caliber players. And with Emmett Johnson, what he showed, Emmett Johnson really surprised me. He was a guy that I thought was going to transfer after the 2022 season, but here he is getting his opportunity and running with it. And I think EJ Barthel really had something to do with that too. So high school recruiting, transfer portal recruiting, those are two big wins for EJ Barthel.
No doubt, no doubt. It's been a big, big year for him. I think he's answered a
Yeah,
lot of questions over the course of this year. I
me
think
too.
he'll continue to do that. As far as what Parker's commitment means, this pretty much wraps up running back recruitment for 2025. They already have Connor Booth, in-state running back. They've already got him
Yeah,
committed. Now they add Parker. They've kind of got a little bit of a lightning and thunder to them.
of course.
Parker's more of a quicker, home run
Hmm.
hitting running back. Boots got some power to him.
Oh
Um,
yeah, 210
and
pounds and he can move.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So this they've got a little bit of a running back duo. But as far as what this means, this does mean recent running back offer, Makai Nelson. Nebraska and Nelson will probably move different directions. That remains to be seen. Nelson came down this weekend to come camp in front of Nebraska's in hope of potentially earning a return official visit. I think that was the whole goal of this weekend, was for him to come down, camp in front of the staff, and depending on how it goes, they were going to schedule an official visit and take this process to the next step. Because Parker committed before the weekend, they had Nelson working out. As far as we saw, we saw him working out at running back. We also saw him working at corner. And the staff is trying to figure out a way to see if they can fit him into this class some way, somehow. But ultimately, I think with where the roster is from a size standpoint, unless they really see something at a different position, I think both sides are going to move to a different direction. Nelson's got some other official visits set up in the coming weeks. I think they're going to continue to set those up as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he picks up some offers as well. He's had a big summer on the camp circuit, so this doesn't necessarily mean anything bad for him necessarily. It's just, I think at this point, Nebraska and Nelson are going to move separate directions. The second commit they picked up is Pierce Mooberry, in-state linebacker, in-state athlete technically, but Nebraska's taking him as a linebacker out of Millard North. Pierce and I have been in touch for a good bit. I had an opportunity to do a live evaluation of him at a 7-on-7 tournament in the spring. He's fascinating. I think he's a guy that is, and I put it on our message board as well, but I think he's a guy that probably should have more offers than he does, and probably should be a little higher ranked than he is. I think there's a lot of raw potential in that frame. He's 6'4", about 205, maybe close to 210 at this point. Plays tight end and linebacker at the high school level, probably, and from what we saw, what I saw, just in my live exposure to him, just moves a lot better at linebacker. I think he's just a lot more fluid moving in space than he is moving upfield trying to run routes. That's not to take away from his ability as a tight end. I think if you go to his Twitter profile, I think he's still got it pinned. If the commitment hasn't now taken over his pin, but he had a one-handed catch and some crazy catches in the 7-on-7 tournament. I saw he's a great tight end. Don't take away from that at all. I just think long-term, in terms of what his upside is, the upside significantly higher at linebacker. Moves around really well, just covers ground well. He's smarter, for like a relatively raw prospect, is smarter than some people give him credit for. Watching him do some zone drops in 7-on-7, he's got a really good feel for like quarterback's eyes, and just manipulating that, getting into just eliminating whatever open space is in the zone he's covering. He does that really fast, really well. And does a good job of baiting quarterbacks into throws and getting his hands on it. I think at 6'4", he's got a rangy wingspan, rangy limbs in general, covers a lot of ground. He's a guy that's going to need some time. I think someone mentioned Javen Wright is like a good kind of comp for him in terms of what the development could potentially look like and time to get on the field. Javen's a guy that came into Nebraska with a lot of intrigue at his size, took some time to put some weight on, but had a good year last year, and projects to be like a key factor in the defense this year. Steve, you've been around Pierce, you've seen the film. What do you think?
Yeah, so he was offered January 3rd, I think is when he was offered, and that got the ball rolling with the whole Nebraska thing. And what I really like about Pierce is, again, he fits. I just think that he fits what Nebraska is looking for on defense, because if you look back at his career at Millard North so far, he's played at all three levels. He's been a defensive end, he's been an inside linebacker, outside linebacker, and he's been a safety in Millard North's defense. So, I mean, those are just all things that Tony White looks for in guys to stick in his defense. These versatile pieces. I know Pierce Mooberry is bigger than Isaac Gifford, but Isaac Gifford came to Nebraska as a safety. He moved down to nickel, and now he's playing that hybrid rover kind of safety linebacker hybrid spot. I'm not saying Pierce Mooberry is going to be Isaac Gifford, but you can just see that, the defenders that do different things, these athletes that do different things, this staff really goes crazy for. And I can understand why, because Pierce Mooberry really just fits into the scheme, and he's big, he's got that long, huge wingspan that is great for outside linebacker type guys. And, I just think this is a really good pickup. He may have been slept on a little bit, but I think, Nebraska are really trying to hunker down on the 500-mile radius, and especially the lock down the borders of their own state. So I think this is an excellent pickup.
For sure. And I don't think it's like you mentioned, I don't think it should go understated. I think this is a big win for Rob Dvorak. And I know, this isn't necessarily this isn't four-star linebacker Christian Jones or four-star linebacker Dawson Marik, who Nebraska's still competing for with national powers. but Pierce had legit offers. Minnesota was after him hard. Kansas State
And
was
Iowa
after him
State too.
hard.
Like whenever
Iowa State
Iowa
as well.
State is talking with you, it's like John Heacock. He knows what he's doing. If John Heacock is interested in you, then like that's good enough for me.
Yep, exactly. These are programs that know linebacker development, that have
Yeah.
produced linebackers. They know what they're looking for, and they had a vision for Pierce. And I was talking to him at that 7-on-7 tournament at the time. He talked about potentially scheduling official visits to Minnesota and Kansas State specifically. Those were two he really
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get out and see. And so the fact that the fact that Nebraska was able to get him committed, but get him committed on the same weekend he was supposed to be at Minnesota for an official visit is a big, big recruiting win for the Big Ten. Nebraska and Minnesota, they've had their recruiting battles and on-field battles over the year. This is a big win for them, just in the sense of, just getting one over on PJ Fleck and the Golden Gophers.
Absolutely agree.
For sure. And real quick before we get out of here, just want to touch on a couple of things. This coming week, Nebraska's hosting these next 2 weeks. Nebraska's hosting camps on campus, but also it's their two biggest official visit weekends of the year. They've got a good number of visitors coming in this weekend. This coming weekend, the 14th through the 16th. We'll just run off some names just off the top. Omaha Westside 4-star linebacker Christian Jones is making his official visit. That's obviously a big one for the staff. 4-star wide receiver out of St. Louis, Corey Sims. He's a Nebraska legacy. He's making his official visit. Nebraska's got a lot of ground to make up there on Missouri. He went out to USC this past weekend. There's just a lot of ground to make up there. So Nebraska's going to do their best job. They're looking for a big body receiver. Corey Sims is 6'4", outside receiver they would really like to have. So we're curious to see how that visit goes. That's a big one.
Hey, Tim, speaking
Yep.
of big body receivers, we can tell the fans about tell the listeners what we saw today at Nebraska's camp on Sunday. Quinn Clark, fresh off a state high jump championship in Bozeman, Montana. Hey, that guy's got a frame to work with. He is long, he is tall, he can go up and get the ball. I know this is a hard pivot from what we were talking about, but Quinn Clark, he was a summer arrival receiver, 3-star prospect, Husker legacy. His dad was a really good player at Nebraska back in the day. I don't know, just getting eyes on Quinn Clark for the first time. Wow.
For sure. Think he's probably bigger than what he was listed at in high school, just off eyeballing it.
Yeah.
Look big. And I think it's interesting. I don't know if this is public yet, but he was wearing 43. All the players that were working the camp were wearing the numbers that they have. He was wearing 43, which is, one, curious for a receiver, but two, does beg the question. The staff does.
Is he moving to outside linebacker? Is he gonna be a future Jack?
The staff,
I don't know. I don't want to feed into that right now. No.
We don't know. But the staff does like to move guys around. 43.
Yeah.
Just thought it was interesting that he was wearing that. While we're on the topic, we did this weekend did also give us an opportunity to get some eyes on some of those summer enrollees. Obviously, in the spring, we got an eye on all the freshmen early enrollees, but we did get an eye on Preston Taumua and some of these other guys. Preston was a guy that really impressed us, just how big he is, right?
Just walking around, just like he's not even doing anything. He's just walking around, helping out at camp. And there he is, like 6'4", 320 pounds. Man, he looks huge. He is huge, and he looks intimidating, and he looks mean and nasty. He looks exactly like a guy that you would want starting at left guard or something like that.
For sure. He's, Steve, you and I kind of talked about it in the stands. You kind of mentioned when you talked to him after he committed that Nebraska kind of talked about him potentially competing for that starting job early on. That's something we can all be like, hey, that was just a recruiting pitch. But after seeing him in person, it's like, hey,
now I'm double thinking it.
He's physically ready to play right now.
He looks like it, yeah.
And if he gets into the playbook, if he can just adjust to, the speed and the physicality of, the Big Ten, he's legitimately going to be in that guard conversation, I think, in come fall camp.
Absolutely.
But he was a big standout of the other, summer enrollees. Was any other summer enrollees that kind of stuck out to you, Steve?
Keona Davis, formerly known as Keona Wilhite. Keona Davis now, the former Washington signee who, after Kalen Board moved to Alabama, Nebraska snatched him up. Tall, huge, big. He was standing next to Ty Robinson, like you and I were talking about, Tim, in the stands. And, Ty Robinson, I'm used to looking at Ty Robinson and him being the biggest guy in the area. Not when Keona Davis is in that same area. I mean, he is eye level with Ty, or maybe even taller.
Oh yeah. And obviously not as filled out as Ty. Ty's added significant mass to his frame.
Mhm.
this offseason. So, Ty is the biggest dude on the team right now, I would say,
Mhm.
pound for pound.
Yes.
But man, Keona, with some time, could be right there too. He's already taller, or as tall, if not taller, right now. Good muscle on his frame coming in. I think I was a little surprised by that coming out of high school. He's only had like a week, if that, in Nebraska's strength and conditioning program. So not
Mhm.
nearly enough to like actually see the effects. So the fact he's already this big is impressive. So I'm curious to see what he looks like at the end of summer. And
Yeah.
you and I kind of talked about this as well, but kind of could see the same kind of career progression as Ty, where he kind of
Just
starts.
like Ty, like grooming him to be the next Ty Robinson. Because I could totally see that right now. Just looking at his frame, he could play the 3 technique. He could slide inside into the A gap too, and be kind of an interior guy. He is just freaky, like big and athletic. I feel like, and that's I just think that he's going to be learning from Ty, and they're just going to have another big long body that can play different techniques along a defensive front in that 3-3-5 defense.
For sure. For sure. All right. Yeah. Getting back to these official visits, we touched on 4-star in-state linebacker Christian Jones making his official visit to Nebraska this weekend. Jones is coming off an official visit to Auburn, and then after Nebraska, he's scheduled to go to Oklahoma. There's still more official visits potentially on the way. I caught up with him last week. You can read that at Inside Nebraska, and my intel on him at Inside Nebraska. But he doesn't have a timeline right now. He's kind of just going through the process, trying to figure out what feels like home. At this point, he's really looking for a feel. And the longer this does go, I know some might believe differently. I do think the longer this goes, it does bode well for Nebraska. One thing I've heard from multiple people at this point, the one thing that Christian wants to see out of Nebraska is an on-field improvement. And I'm not necessarily sure a summer commitment bodes well for Nebraska if that's the only thing, the box he's left to check. He's visited Nebraska double digits time, well over 10 times at this point. He's been recruited across multiple staffs. We've got pictures in the Rivals database of him talking to Scott Frost at midfield, before a game. Like, that's how long he's been recruited by Nebraska. So he's seen, and again, these last few years, we all know it's not been winning football necessarily. So he
Mm-hmm.
wants to be part of a winning team, wants to be part of a winning culture. And Nebraska will have their chance to kind of show that they're moving in the right direction, at least this fall. And I think, if it does get to that point where it's in the fall and he's uncommitted, Nebraska puts together some wins, I think, things start to trend towards Nebraska's way a little more than they already are. At the same time, the other he is also the type that, he's taking this process very somewhat nonchalant right now. Like, he's just truly just evaluating each program.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a chance that he kind of already is in his heart, kind of knows where he's going. And it's the school that's been recruiting him the longest, the hardest, and the school that's been the one consistent at the top of his recruitment across these past 3-4 years. And that is Nebraska. So I
Mm-hmm.
still feel good about where Nebraska stands. Again, this weekend official visit will be big for kind of confirming some things with him, getting that feel from Nebraska and kind of, spending some time on campus, learning, about kind of the ins and outs of what life would be like and getting a plan for what his career could look like. Didn't intend to touch on Christian Jones. I know we've talked about him a lot on here, but just wanted to kind of lay out kind of what this weekend looks like for him. Beyond Jones, another one we just touched on, Corey Sims, 4-star receiver out of St. Louis. This will be another
Mm-hmm.
big visit for him. Beyond him, a relatively new official visit that's been scheduled. Somerville edge rusher Jayden Loftin. This is a
Yeah.
somewhat new offer for Nebraska. They offered him back in May. The staff stopped by the school, let him know, hey, you're a priority. Even though we just offered, we want you at Nebraska. And he popped up on Nebraska's radar after the Under Armour New Jersey camp, which is where they also found Makai Nelson, who we previously mentioned. But Lofton was the guy that tested really well there, had some offers going into that camp, has some big time offers going into that camp, but came out of it with some impressive testing numbers, some impressive measurements, kind of checked some of those boxes that Nebraska is looking for. So they went ahead, pulled the trigger, offered him, and they're working fast to kind of not just get him on campus, but hopefully, get him committed. Nebraska's battling some real contenders here. Some of the Northeast schools are legit in there: Penn State, Rutgers,
Mm-hmm.
Syracuse, but also Wisconsin. Wisconsin's made them a priority. They've been in this recruitment for longer. So I'd keep an eye on the Badgers there, but Nebraska's going to do their best to. This will be his first visit on campus, and Nebraska's going to do their best to impress. And Nebraska has something to point to now. I think this is something that's gone a little bit understated over this offseason. The new facility is something that Nebraska legitimately has in their back pocket as a real recruiting tool. Guys even that visited for the camps this weekend. Guys that have, I've talked to guys that like Dawson Merritt, former linebacker Dawson Merritt. He's down to Nebraska and Alabama. Those are the final two schools for him. He's had the who's in his recruitment. He's visited a bunch of programs. Jackson Cantwell, 2026 5-star offensive tackle. Already been to Georgia, already been to Oregon, already seen all these top schools. Both of them have had raved about Nebraska's facility. What they see in the facility, they believe it's one of the top in the country. That's something Nebraska has in their back pocket now on the recruiting trail. And that's something they're going to use to try and impress guys like Loftin, who are getting eyes on Nebraska for the first time and, are just looking for what's different here. And what's different here right now is the facilities. So curious to see how that visit goes. That's a big one for this weekend as Nebraska is trying to, fill up that D-line class. Another edge rusher they're bringing in for the first time is Jamal Frilot out of Texas. Spring Decaney, actually, the same city that I'm from. I'm from Spring, Texas. But I've from my time in Houston, in the Houston area, I've gotten plenty of time to see Jamal in both on the field and in 7-on-7 and practice type settings. Intriguing frame, he can do a lot of things. We kind of list him as an edge rusher, but I think he can play linebacker. I think he can play in space if needed to. Has some positional versatility to him. Also did play some tight end at the high school level. He kind of goes a bit underrated at Decaney. They've got the 2026 linebacker that has some big time offers and a 2025 tight end that's got some big time offers. And so he's kind of like slipped under the radar a little bit, but a legit 6'5", good athlete, moves well. Moves really well in space, arrives with intentions, at the point of attack. So curious to see how this visit goes for him. He's got a bit of a open recruitment, so I think this is a feel out visit both for him and Nebraska to kind of see how serious they both are about each other. So that'll be this weekend as well. Another one, similar type of feel out visit, Brian Halahifi Tapu is an offensive tackle out of Salt Lake City West. He visited Nebraska in the spring with some of the Salt Lake City West teammates and coaches. That's where Nebraska got eyes on him. Nebraska offered him early in the spring, and they're intrigued by the raw potential. The backstory on this kid is he's 6'7", 290 pounds, and he just played his first year of football this past fall after moving in from New Zealand. So another international prospect playing in Salt Lake City. Again, the best way to put it, a lot of raw potential. 6'7", 290, carries it well right now, can put on 40, 50 pounds if he needs to at the next level. That type of frame that can carry a lot more weight. And if he does end up coming to Nebraska, Nebraska's going to want him to add additional weight and spend some time, just working on his technique, figuring things out, figuring out how to bend at that size, figuring out how to get low, get leverage, all those things. This is I believe a feel out visit as well. Nebraska, both sides are trying to figure out how high they are on each other. He's got limited offers right now in terms of true FBS opportunity or true Power 5 opportunities. Oregon State's one that's in there. Iowa State's another one that's in there, but Nebraska's his biggest offer by far right now. And this is one of those that could potentially move fast. Or coming out of the weekend, Nebraska would be like, hey, we're probably moving in another direction offensive line wise. And he's like, yeah, I kind of want to stay closer to home or stay closer to the West Coast anyway. Maybe just go to Oregon State or but curious to see how this weekend goes for him. That's one to keep an eye on because that's one that could potentially move fast with a very strong official visit. Another one of the unoffered, I guess, or of the uncommitted official visitors coming in this weekend, Malcolm Simpson out of Hitchcock, Texas. Another one like Loftin, relatively new offer for Nebraska. Simpson's a guy that's been on my radar for a while. Again, like before I came here, I was in Texas. I've been watching Malcolm Simpson for 2-3 years at this point. He played at Galveston Ball prior to this coming fall. He transferred to Hitchcock this spring. At Ball, he played all over the defensive line, played some 5-tech, played some 3-tech, even played some nose, like a true 0-tech at 6'4", 240, and he was dominant. Really, really, really impressed with everything I've seen from him. I saw him again in camp this spring when I was down at the Under Armour Houston camp. Just dominated again in reps. 6'4", 240, probably closer to 250 at this point. We list him at 240, probably closer to 250 at this point. Carries the weight really well, and has the frame to continue adding, could get up to 280, 290 if he needed to be. One of those, Nebraska loves, especially in this defense, loves these versatile defensive line bodies. I think you've noticed that, Steve. They love these guys that can just kind of play. Like Riley Van Poppel is a good example. A guy that can play pretty much all three positions across the line and dominate from all three, if needed, can move inside and hold his own. Simpson's the same way. And Simpson, just turn on his tape, man, his basketball tape. At that size, he's dunking. He's not just dunking. He's like, it's acrobatic dunks. It's like it's highlight reel dunks. And so again, this is a new offer for Nebraska. They offered just last month, but this is one that's become a top priority, just like Lofton's become a top priority for the staff. I went out to see Nebraska D-line commit Tyson Terry last week, and I asked him, "Hey, is there any guys you're working on peer recruiting?" And he just mentioned one name, and it was Malcolm Simpson. And I was like, "That's interesting. Why?" And so he was like, basically, him and Knighton talk. Knighton really wants him. And after watching the basketball tape, after talking to him, he was like, "Oh, I want him too. I want him playing with me."
Yeah.
So this is a guy that Nebraska really, really wants. Nebraska's really trying to make an impression fast. I've mentioned it on the board as well, there are some potential academic hurdles to clear here that Nebraska's wary of and is monitoring, but just something to keep an eye on. But this is another one that, like Tapu, could end up moving fast if he's given the green light, essentially coming out of the visit. Another one that Steve, you're familiar with, and one of the last few uncommitted visitors for the weekend, Aiden Manutai out of Kahuku, Hawaii. This is a guy Nebraska loves. I've heard from multiple sources at this point that this is like there are higher ranked defensive backs on the board for Nebraska, but this is the guy they really, really want. If you could ask them, if you could, give them truth serum about if there was one DB you could get this cycle, which one is it? It would be Aiden. Aiden's a guy and this is another one that turn on the tape. The tape is better than probably the ranking. Really, really impressive tape. And I talked to a scout out in California, a couple scouts out in California that saw him play against Mater Dei, that have been out to Hawaii and seen him. They think long-term his potential is actually better at corner than he is at safety. I just think he's very, very natural in coverage. You can see that on tape. But he's very physical. That's why I think like it's going to be open between safety and corner just because he's willing to be physical and he likes to be physical. He likes to arrive in, he likes to be involved in the run game. That's not a normal corner. Corners aren't typically like that. So I personally think safety, but again, Evan Cooper loves to move the DBs around. This is one that he would love to move around. But the one thing here with Aiden is this recruitment's gotten contentious, especially the spring.
There's so many programs after him. Good, like big time programs.
Good big time programs that no DB play. Tennessee's in there. He's coming off an official visit there. Penn State's in it. Washington's in it. Cal's in it. And so Washington and Cal, I'd keep an eye on just because it's somewhat closer to home. Obviously on the West Coast, it's a quicker flight back home. But he's been very interested in Nebraska. That this is one that's been, this is an official visit that's been scheduled for a while now. This is a player that's been on Nebraska's radar for a while now, that Nebraska's been talking to for a while now. So this is another one that I think could move fast, depending on what happens this coming weekend. Steve, you've talked to him a couple of times. The kid. Kind of what's your impression of him?
Well, I just know that he really loves Matt Rule. He said that Matt Rule came to high school in Kakahu and visited with him, and he really loves the defense that Nebraska plays. And Tony White was talking with him, and I talked to Aiden back in February, I think it was, and I have his quote up here actually, and I'm going to read it for you. We were just talking about the defense, and Aiden, his answer about the defense was, Coach White, he really likes that he sees me all over on film. Sometimes I'm just playing back there. Sometimes I'm at high red. Sometimes I'm at free safety. I can blitz, cover down, play man to man. I think Coach White really likes that. I look forward to just going and checking out Nebraska. So that was back in February. Obviously they've kept up communication. Nebraska has with Aiden, and you're right. There's a lot of different programs after him, and he's visited Arizona, Cal, Tennessee's a big one. Penn State's in there, like you said. So I just think that Aiden Manutai really fits. Again, I keep talking about a fit with a lot of these guys, but it's true, and it's so big. He can play. They like Nebraska's defensive coaches really love versatile players, and that's Aiden Manutai. He can be the safety you mentioned, corner, add like pack on a few pounds, and he's your rover too. I mean, you mentioned the downhill physicality of this kid. That's it. I mean, whenever you can get a Hawaiian, a poly on defense, I love that. I mean, those guys know how to play football. They know how to hit. They know how to play with violence. So anytime you can snatch up one of those guys, I'm all for it. And again, the big play ability with Aiden Manutai, he had 3 interceptions last fall. as a junior. One of them was a 56-yard pick six in a really huge game against St. John Bosco. So Kakahu was playing St. John's Bosco, and really huge game. He came up with a 56-yard pick six. I mean, that's just, I just think he's a big play guy, and I think that Nebraska fans would love to have somebody like him in the defensive backfield.
No doubt. And this is one I would say, again, turn on the tape. Like, just watch the Mater Day tape, watch the St. John Bosco tape. He went up against those are two of the top programs in the country, high school programs in the country. He went up against both of those and he balled out. Again, these are 4 or 5-star receivers he's going up against as a 3-star safety. Again, I understand people look at the rankings and look at the star next to the player, but this is a kid that I truly believe is better than the star rating.
And he's bigger than our rivals card has him at. Our rivals card has him at 6 foot 170. That's not correct right now. In February he was 6 foot 189. I think he said he was. So he actually mentioned that when I was talking about the recruiting things. He said that coaches were coming to Hawaii to see him, and they're like, "Man, you're a lot bigger than what everybody says you are." He's like, "Yeah, I don't know where that was." So he's like, he's not 170 pounds. He's closer to 190 right now.
Yep, for sure. And this one, I'm very curious to see what he measures in at Nebraska.
I'd love to get the up to date
his rivals
stuff.
profile. We'll update his rivals profile, with that updated measurement after he comes in this weekend. The last uncommitted visitor that's coming in for the June 14th weekend is Shawn Hammerbeck, kind of a versatile athlete, offensive lineman / defensive lineman out of Winter, South Dakota. One that's kind of quiet, in terms of recruitment. It's been a very quiet recruitment for him. I've heard from some sources. This is one that I've already mentioned a couple of these guys, but this is one that could move fast for Nebraska, depending on how this visit goes. He came down in the spring, which was when he was offered. The family is coming out of South Dakota, not necessarily Nebraska fans, but they know where the program, they know the history, they understand, what this program, and Nebraska's a regional school. It's driving distance for him, kind of makes some sense for him. Another school to keep an eye on there is Texas Tech. Nebraska's had some real recruiting battles with Texas Tech over the last 2 years or so now since Matt Rule's gotten here, as they've recruited Texas as hard as they have. But on the flip side, Texas Tech is really making a push in the Dakotas. They kind of see some untapped potential there. I don't know if obviously I'm a sicko for this recruiting stuff, so I follow a lot of this. But Texas Tech recruiting staff, like, they spent a lot of time in South Dakota this spring. In that May evaluation period where they were on the road, they were making flights up to Sioux Falls and making drives around South Dakota. Like, they're really trying to make a push in there. So keep an eye on South Dakota.
James Blanchard's kind of a stud, right?
Yeah. Like, very good evaluator. Kind of goes where, again, like Nebraska staff, Blanchard's a guy that just turns over as many rocks as he can find looking for
They
talent.
even found Stanton, Nebraska with Ren Brown, offensive tackle prospect.
Yeah, and Brown's the one that actually he's camping this coming weekend as well. Not an official visitor, but one that should be mentioned. Brown is camping this weekend.
Came off of Oregon State visit.
Coming out of Oregon State visit. He plays 8-man football. I think Nebraska wants to get an eye and see kind of how he moves, what he looks like going up against some bigger defensive linemen. One that could potentially be on offer watch, but at the same time, Brown's planning on committing at the end of June. And, I think Nebraska at this point, given where
which is smart for him. We talked about it earlier. It's smart for Ren Brown to get a spot early.
Exactly. He's just trying to lock in a spot. He's trying to get his recruitment done, as most players are at this point, and this is something that I've talked about off the air, but just kind of wanted to mention it here real quick. The recruiting calendar has changed over these last 2 years in terms of what the players are thinking of. Obviously, the actual recruiting challenge has changed, but in terms of what these players are thinking and the advice they're getting from trainers and coaches and everybody, they're all being told pretty much to kind of lock in a spot in the summer, for the most part. And on the flip side of that as well, on the other side of that coin, Nebraska and most of these Power 5 programs are trying to get the majority of their class done by the summer. You saw Nebraska's recruiting strategy shift from prioritizing game days for official visits to this year. The big official visit weekends are in the summer. They want to bring in guys in June because they get the entire weekend with them, compared to an official visit weekend where Friday is game prep. When these guys are arriving, they're prepping for the game on Saturday. Saturday is obviously the game. So there's like 5 to 6 hours in there where the team is on the field and the players are in the stands. And yes, they're getting that game day experience, which this Nebraska staff loves to highlight and showcase. But that's time that the staff isn't getting with the players, one-on-one time. So they're now shifting their priorities to we're getting guys in June. We're going to spend the entire weekend with them. We're going to make the most of the hours we have with them. And we're just going to show them what Nebraska is, invite them out to games, and hope that, as we build this program up, guys are officially visiting after already making a couple of game day visits. So they have an understanding of what the program has to offer, what a game day atmosphere looks like. And so at that point, all that's left is for Nebraska's coaches to sell the players on Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
So curious to see, like we said, this is going to be a big upcoming visit weekend for Nebraska. We'll have all the updates at Inside Nebraska. Steve, appreciate you joining. We're going to be as camp and OV season goes on. It's probably just going to be me and Steve on these pods these next few weeks as we just react to the latest that's happening in Nebraska recruiting news as we, collect intel and gather intel from these official visit weekends and these camps. So stay tuned to Inside Nebraska. Stay tuned to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. Like and subscribe this video if you can. And we will see you all next week.